Over the years, we've created videos on the creepy and dark side of things. People getting kidnapped, mysterious disappearances, haunted places, abandoned places, and places with too many damn snakes. Today I'm going to share with you some of the most disturbing videos uploaded. In this first part, we're going down the kidnapped and disappearance rabbit hole. Let's take a look.
So I started on this journey of researching kidnappings in different countries. The stories, the situations, and the reasons people get kidnapped is a rabbit hole I don't advise you going down. The definition of kidnapping is this: the action of abducting someone and holding them captive. People get kidnapped hundreds of times a day around the world, and it's something that's increased in frequency over the last 3 decades. The numbers keep climbing so much so that most countries have stopped reporting the numbers. Some stopped way back in the early 2000s. So as you can imagine, that made it kind of hard to do serious research on the subject. Different organizations have different studies, and they've all done research, and they all have different numbers. Number 2 on this list showed up in every single one of the studies that I read, and one study said that about 2,000 people get abducted every year or kidnapped from this country. Another one said it was around 6,000, and another one said it was about 14,000. And that's not a one-off, that's how they were with just about every country. So I decided that today's video is just going off what the US State Department says. 9 of these countries are what the Department of State considers level 4 most dangerous, and they carry the nice little warning of do not travel. And they're all known for a high rate of kidnappings. One on this list is only at level 2, but they've got a serious kidnapping problem right now. And the State Department warns about that. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Haiti. Haiti isn't much for political stability. They never have been. It's not how they roll. Haiti takes up about 30% of the island of Hispaniola. The other side is the Dominican Republic. And this island is thought to have been inhabited since about 5000 BC by different groups of Native Americans that arrived from Central and South America. There's always been some kind of turmoil, and they've had independence and they haven't. Back from 1492 to 1625, the Spanish ruled them, then the French were there, then they had a Haitian Revolution, then they were occupied by the United States for almost 20 years, and that's when the fun began. Things started getting crazy sometime after the United States left. Matter of fact, at one point, in 1 year, they had 4 different presidents. And then they finally got a guy named Papa Doc, and Papa Doc decided after he got in office, he would be president for life. Here's the thing, he was the president for life. His life, which ended in 1971, and then his son took over, who they called Baby Doc. It is estimated that during the time that the father and son duo ran Haiti, 40 to 60,000 Haitians were killed by the government. Over the years, they've had a lot of chaos and turmoil, and they actually had a really bad earthquake in 2010, which kind of made the place a little more lawless than it already was. Different organizations have kind of joined forces to try and get Haiti under control, including the United States. In 2010, after the earthquake, the New York City Police Department sent a team of veteran officers to Haiti to assist in rebuilding their police force. They gave them specialized training in investigation techniques and strategies to improve their anti-kidnapping personnel. It was so bad they had to send cops from New York to teach them how to save their people from getting kidnapped. Here in 2022, it's still bad, and it's number 10 on this list. Number 9, Brazil. Brazil's had a problem with kidnappings for a very long time. They have different types of kidnapping, and the one that's most popular in Brazil is called express kidnapping. This is one where they abduct you and then demand a certain amount of money for your release. Usually a small amount just to get the process over and done with. Make enough cash, but not so much that someone would want to get the authorities involved. Usually it happens with abducting someone off the street, forcing them to take money out of their ATM machine, or calling a family member and forcing them to take money out and bring it to them. One that's really popular in Brazil is cab drivers that are working with a gang or a group of people. They'll pick up someone, they'll drive them to a spot, and when they get to that spot, let's say it's a stop sign or something like that, there are people waiting there for them, and they'll get in on each side of the cab, and the person's stuck between them, and they've been kidnapped. Brazil's a beautiful country with amazing people. You just got to be very aware of where you're going. The State Department suggests you reconsider traveling here. Number 8, Iraq. Iraq's had a problem with this long before any of the wars started there. During the times of Saddam Hussein, they had one type of kidnapping that was very popular. It's called enforced disappearance. This is a secret abduction and imprisonment of a person by the state or political organization. Saddam Hussein and his people were really big on this one. People used to get snatched off the street on a regular basis. Then after the wars and these days, it's different militia or terrorist groups that are doing it too, civilians or members of other groups. Different organizations have different opinions on what's going on in Iraq, but most of them agree that this happens quite a few times a day in Iraq. Number 7, Libya. This one is sort of a way of life for them. They've had a few different types of kidnappings over the years. They had the enforced disappearances and political kidnappings when Muammar Gaddafi was in charge of that shit show. And these days they have their fair share of express kidnappings. But with Gaddafi gone, the enforced disappearances haven't changed. It's just being done by several groups nowadays instead of just the government. The State Department has Libya as a level 4 most dangerous and gives the warning of do not travel. Number 6, Mali. Mali is actually officially known as the Republic of Mali, and it's a landlocked country in West Africa. Mali is the 8th largest country in Africa with an area of over 1.2 million square miles. They have a population of just over 22 million residents. And here's a strange fact, about 67% of the population is under the age of 25. Now that number comes from 2019. I doubt that it's changed much since then. Here's the thing, do not travel to Mali. They've got high crime, terrorism, and a ton of kidnappings. On July 29th, 2022, the State Department ordered the departure of non-emergency U.S. government employees and family members due to the high risk of terrorist attacks and the kidnappings of Westerners. It's not a safe place to be. And it's not just the Americans and the Westerners getting abducted here. They still do bride kidnappings here, or it's also known as marriage by abduction or marriage by captured. But basically, you get captured and you gotta marry some dude. This is usually done in villages and things like that, but it's going on there. Number 5, Somalia. It's Somalia, so yeah, you know it's gonna have some kind of kidnapping. I mean, they got war, famine, extreme poverty, pirates, shark-infested waters, and one of the most polluted harbors on the planet. If for some insane reason you went to Somalia as a Westerner, you run a pretty good risk of being kidnapped. They're big on kidnap for ransom, and they actually do a form of shanghaiing. They actually force those poor dudes to get on the boats and go attack ships out in the ocean. That's died down a little bit over the last few years, but that was pretty serious for quite a while back around 2015. About the time they started putting security forces, or as I like to call them, mercenaries, on oil tankers and cargo ships, that kind of slowed down. Number 4, Burkina Faso. Staying in Africa, we got Burkina Faso. It is right next to Mali. Burkina Faso is a landlocked country in West Africa with a population of about 20,000 residents. And if you go visit, there's a good chance someone's taking you, especially if you're a woman. They're kind of big on bride kidnapping and impressment, which is sort of like shanghaiing, but in a military sense. Impressment is, or the press as they call it, or press gang, is taking men into military or naval force by compulsion. Basically, they make them join whatever military factions. This country is big on the coup d'etat. They had one in 2022, they had one in 2015, they had one in 1987, they had one in 1983. Kidnapping and government overthrows, that's what they're all about here in Burkina Faso. And getting bit by poisonous snakes. And stop typing, I know they're called venomous snakes. There's a difference. There's poisonous things, but snakes are venomous. Number 3, Mexico. Now earlier I said one of the countries isn't on level 4 according to the State Department. Actually there's 2, Brazil and Mexico. But they both have this problem with kidnapping. Sorry, that's my mistake. Don't kidnap me. In Mexico, they are big on express kidnapping and just straight up ransom kidnapping. This has been going on for quite a while in Mexico. Somewhere around the early 90s, when a lot of the cartels and gangs started coming into power in Mexico, this became a normal way to make money for a lot of them. I guess impressment would be one that fits here too, because they take a lot of people from the villages, young men usually, and make them join the gangs or whatever. In Mexico, it's really hard to figure out exactly how many people are being abducted or kidnapped every single year for a couple reasons. One, fear of the gangs and the cartels cartels, and then the Mexican people have a real fear of police involvement in anything. One country that should have been on this list, or would have been, I should say, around 15 years ago or so, was Colombia. They were really big into this. They're one of the only ones that in the last 15 years have gone downhill, but they kind of flattened out around a decade ago. But Mexico's pretty bad. Number 2, Venezuela. Venezuela, this is another country that's been doing this for quite some time, and it's kind of a business. They have gangs that do this on a regular basis as a source of income for the gang. I mean, every country's got some of that, but this seems to be a big thing in Venezuela. Venezuela is big on enforced disappearances. That's their government. They also have political kidnappings going on there. And one of my favorites, tiger kidnapping. Yes, tiger kidnapping is a thing, and no, it's not absconding with someone's tiger. Tiger kidnapping or tiger robbery involves 2 separate crimes. The first crime usually involves the abduction of any person or thing someone highly values. Instead of demanding money from that person, the captors demand that they commit another crime on their behalf. Basically, we're going to burn your house to the ground or, do something horrible to your family if you don't rob this bank for us. And then these people go out there, they've been told they got to do this or someone's going to die, and they rob banks, and then it turns into this big thing. There was one probably about 20 years ago, which I thought was horrible. They strapped a bomb to a lady and made her go rob a bank, and when the police got involved and everything like that, they just blew her up. What sucks about that one is that was kind of the first one, and then it became a thing, including to some poor pizza man here in the US. The good news is the pair that did that to the pizza man here in the US, they got captured. The pizza man didn't make it. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There's a link for it below. We'd love it if you went over there and subscribed, watched some videos, share them amongst your friends. Or if you're old enough, just start talking about them to the local grocery clerk. I say old enough because only people over 50 will actually do that. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Yemen. You ever heard of Yemen? Do you know where Yemen is? I'm gonna tell you. And I promise, I'm not making it up. It exists. Yemen sits on the Gulf of Aden, bordered by Saudi Arabia and Oman. It's right across from Djibouti and Somalia. The Gulf of Aden is right at the mouth of the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea where they meet, and it's part of the whole Suez Canal thing. And they've been in a civil war for over 7 years. Roughly 400,000 people have been killed. So as you can imagine, this place is a nightmare. Besides the civil war, there's a good chance you could be kidnapped, especially if you're a Westerner. And they do every kind of kidnapping here. You could be kidnapped and forced to be a soldier. You could be kidnapped and forced to be a wife. You could be held for ransom. You could be a political pawn. I imagine you could be an express kidnapping victim, but not a lot of people there have money, so there'd be no point in that. The only one they really don't have there is gooning. That's one we haven't talked about. There's a type of kidnapping called gooning, like a goon, and it's big in the United States. It's when your parents call one of those camps and they tell them that your kid's on drugs, and so they come and abduct you and take you to one of those camps to get you off drugs. Yeah, that's gooning. They don't have that in Yemen. Because of the civil war and all-around lawlessness, kidnapping is a big thing, along with so many other crimes. It's just a place you want to avoid at all costs. And that's pretty much the advice the State Department gives you about Yemen. What is going on, everyone? Have you ever just wanted to get away? People do it all the time. Sadly, sometimes they didn't plan it that way. People have mental breakdowns, people encounter foul play, they get lost at sea, and some people think little green men snatch them up and do experiments on their backside. Did you know that there are places in the United States where more than a few people have just disappeared without a trace? Like poof, they're gone, never to be seen again. People have theories on what happened, but no solid proof. I mean, occasionally it's safe to assume that if a person fell overboard while boating on a New Jersey lake or something, but there's no proof until they find that person or body, whatever the case may be. And that's what today's list is all about. Places where people have disappeared, never to be found again, more than once in a location. So, hey, lock your front door, grab a cup of tea, and watch my top 10 places people keep disappearing from in the United States. Number 10, Erkhammer, Iowa. Now, this one's really weird. Erkhammer was a town in Iowa, and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right, but we'll press on. Anyway, there was supposedly a town that once existed known as Erkhammer, though no one speaks of it today. It had apparently been an average Midwestern community up until about 1928, when all the residents suddenly vanished, like they don't know where they went. The population of Iowa is sort of sparse today, so you can imagine what it was like back in 1928. There were several reports from passing travelers
of this empty town, which eventually led to an incident being published in some local newspapers. But the stock market crashed in 1929, and soon this was just a back page story. It became a side note in a really tragic time in the United States. When the Dust Bowl hit, Urkhammer was left in a disheveled state and quickly forgotten. There are no traces of the town to this day. Some really aren't sure where it was. Obviously, we didn't have satellites and YouTubes back then, so we'll never know what happened for sure. You know, if that was reported today, tomorrow the town would be crawling with YouTubers, including myself, trying to figure out what went on. Number 9. The Bennington Triangle. Located in the southwestern part of Vermont, this landlocked triangular area is notorious for a string of unexplained disappearances that occurred here. From 1945 to 1955, 7 to possibly 10 people vanished in this area, ranging from an 8-year-old boy to a 74-year-old mountain guide female. And even a man disappeared while on the bus, like he was on the bus one minute, gone the next. There's also other reports that people that were heading that direction were never heard from again. There's no real evidence of that. There's one story in 1949 where 3 hunters went missing from the area, but like I said, little evidence of those claims. To this day, there's no definite explanation for the vanishings. I mean, nobody was ever found. Nobody knows what happened. Nobody saw them get abducted. They didn't find a body at the bottom of a ravine, nothing. A lot of people believe that they may have been victims of a serial killer, but again, no proof. It's either that or maybe Bigfoot's abducting people. I've never heard of him abducting people, but maybe he's just that good. Number 8, the Great Smoky Mountains. Between the states of Tennessee and North Carolina, you have the Appalachian Mountain area. Inside that, you have the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. If you've never been here or seen the Great Smoky Mountains, I would suggest it. You'll thank me later. Unless, of course, you end up going missing, then I imagine your family's going to build a voodoo doll about me and force it to watch the Kardashians, because that's torture. Since the Smoky Mountains are part of the national park system, it's natural that they get a lot of tourists. And many of those tourists go to the towns that are all around the area. Get a lot of foot traffic for their businesses. The downside is a bunch of people have gone missing over the years. The earliest one recorded was in 1969 when a 6-year-old boy went missing. Despite the largest manhunt in the history of the Smoky Mountains National Park, searchers came up empty in June of 1969 while looking for 6-year-old Dennis Martin. Dennis's father and some other adults sat southwest of Anthony Creek Trailhead watching Dennis, his 9-year-old brother, Douglas, and a couple other boys playing near the top of the trailhead. Douglas, the 9-year-old brother, would later tell the park officials that he and the other children hatched a plan to play a joke on the grown-ups. They would sneak around and surprise them. Douglas and the 2 other boys went one way, and 6-year-old Dennis went the other. Not a good plan already. It was the last time he was ever seen again. The adults had seen the boys split up, but when Douglas and the other 2 reappeared, there was no Dennis. They've never found a trace. And then the latest one happened in 1981 when an elderly woman went into the woods and was never seen again. Number 7, Superstition Mountains. Out in the desert of Arizona near Phoenix sits the Superstition Mountains. Locals call it Superstitions. When the Spanish originally rolled through here, they called them Sierra de la Espuma, which I believe I pronounced it right. Anyway, it's been a long time since I took a Spanish class. But it means the mountain range of foam. I don't know what was going on with these Spaniards when they rolled through here. They were missing like bubble baths or whatever and just had bubbles on their mind. They called them the mountain range of foam. These mountains are not only known for their legends among the Apache people, who believe that this is the entrance to the underworld somewhere around these mountains, but who knows. It's also known for numerous disappearances that have occurred over the years. A lot of these people went missing and were found years later. Dead, obviously. And the strange thing about a lot of them, they were missing their heads. It's like some tradition around here. Find someone in the desert digging around and you chop off their head. I don't know. A lot of people go here over the, decades and centuries looking for the lost Dutchman's gold. They had another one in 1958. The identity of the person who disappeared is unknown. But in April of 1958, a deserted campsite was discovered over the northern outskirts of the mountain range. And the scene was pretty grim. Things like cooking tools, gun cleaning supplies, a Geiger counter, and some personal letters were left behind. But most disturbingly, there was a blood-soaked blanket. Someone left their letters behind, but tore all the addresses out of the letters and the name of the person. So they don't know where the person went. They just know there was a bloody blanket behind, left all their stuff behind, and someone took all the names off the letters. That's just weird. Number 6, Pyramid Lake. Near Reno, Nevada sits Pyramid Lake, named after the pyramid-shaped rock formation sticking out of the water. Pyramid Lake, you get it? The lake is on the Paiute Indian Reservation. It is one of the tribe's main fishing grounds. The lake is home to a couple different species of trout, so there's good eating there.
But this beautiful lake got some attention in the media and the internet when 2 men went missing there in 2017, leading to some speculations about what could have happened to them. It's been 2 years since Ron Hagwood and Quentin Johnson went missing, and there's a lot of theories out there. This even includes the idea that they were dragged underwater by spirits known as water babies. Yeah, water babies. They're these things that they make a crying noise, and when you look over to see if there's a baby in the water, they pull you in, never to be seen again. And it's also part of the Paiute legend. This is the thing about the lake. It is deep and it stays cold. This causes bodies that fall into the lake not to decompose. If they don't decompose, they stay preserved and submerged for a very long time. In the 1980s, a body of a woman floated to the top of the lake. They pulled her out, obviously. They did an autopsy and came to the conclusion she died in the 1800s. That's freaky. Number 5, the Nevada Triangle. Consisting of a large section of desert and the Sierra Nevada mountains, this triangular area in Nevada and California has made headlines in the last decade or so due to a disappearance that occurred on September 3rd, 2007. The victim was aviator, adventurer, and friend to billionaires Steve Fawcett. He flew into the Nevada Triangle in a small plane and was never seen or heard from again. On May 1st, 2008, they did find the plane, but no Steve. Then on October 29th, 2008, search teams recovered 2 large human bones that they suspected might belong to Fawcett. These bones were about a half a mile east of the crash site, and it also had a tennis shoe with animal bites on it. So things weren't looking good for Steve at this point. And on November 3rd, the California coroner said that the DNA profiling of the 2 bones confirmed that it matched Fawcett's DNA. Madera County Sheriff John Anderson said Fawcett would have died on impact in such a crash, and that it's not unusual for an animal to drag remains away like this. So yeah, I hope he died on impact. That'd be kind of brutal. You're sitting there trying to recover, maybe you got a broken leg, trying to drink rainwater, something like that. Next thing you know, something's dragging you away. That's not good. But he's not the only one. A lot of other people have disappeared in this area. A lot of people think its close proximity to Area 51 has something to do with it. Some even think it's ghosts that attack planes. The Nevada Triangle has become an aircraft graveyard. In the last 60 years, hundreds of pilots who have ventured into this area never return. At least not alive. Number 4. One of the most popular national parks in the world is Yosemite in California. It is known for its beauty and its wide array of wildlife, which includes bears. That has been a problem since forever. Bears have always been a problem in most national parks. Back when I first visited Yosemite, they had these outhouses that you would sit in that only came up to like your shoulders, sort of like a convertible car. This way you could see if anything was coming towards you while you were doing your business. The good news about those things, that if you did see a bear rushing towards you out of the woods while you're on the toilet, you were already prepared what was about to happen to your bowels. No need for Metamucil. The bear kind of worked that out for you. Yosemite is known for the many disappearances it has seen over the years, 45 of which have never been solved, and that dates back to the 1800s. There's even stories about children who were spirited away from where they originally were in the park and end up in a completely different section miles and miles away. These stories are blamed by supernatural beings that supposedly occupy the area. One in particular was Stacy Ann Aris, who was 14 years old when she disappeared in Yosemite. She was part of a group of 10 people that were on a 4-day guided horseback trip through the park. On July 17th, 1981, the group had reached some cabins that they were to stay overnight at. As everyone was eating and showering, she was last seen going over to some small lake not too far away to take pictures. They say the last person that saw her standing on a boulder about 50 yards away from camp. They never found a trace of her. Number 3, Lake Superior. One of the Great Lakes that sits along the border of the United States and Canada is Lake Superior, and it's gained notoriety over the years for the number of ships that it's claimed. The bottom of the lake is littered with wrecks that have been found, and some sit hundreds of years later waiting to be found. For this reason, the place attracts scuba divers and research vessels with remote submersibles that go down looking for sunken ships. Probably the most infamous is the Edmund Fitzgerald that went down in 1975. This was the inspiration for the famous folk song by Gordon Lightfoot called The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which told the story of the disaster. There are over 70 big ships that have disappeared on Lake Superior. About 15 of those have never been found. That's not even counting the smaller ones that have gone missing. There's an old saying that was also in the lyrics to the Gordon Lightfoot song, but the saying is, Superior, they say, never gives up its dead. Number 2. Pecos, New Mexico. Not to be confused with Paco, Texas, this is a small village in New Mexico, and it's not too far from Santa Fe on the Pecos River, hence the name,
Pecos. While it is a popular place for the outdoorsy hunting fishing types, it's also known for several disappearances that have occurred in the area. Back in 2009, a 61-year-old man went missing on a hunting trip and was never seen again. Melvin Nadal, age 61, vanished outside of Pecos near Elk Mountain on Sunday, September 6, 2009. There's been no trace of Mel at all. He and his friends went hunting. At some point, he decided to stay near camp and poof, Mel was gone. This and many other missing persons have led the locals to refer to the area as the Pecos Triangle, with roads supposedly haunted by supernatural beings and UFOs. Of course, if it's New Mexico, Arizona, someone's got to throw some aliens in there. UFOs, whatnot, all that good stuff. Have you ever noticed whenever they got a couple too many people go missing in an area, they throw a triangle on it? And number 1, the Alaskan Triangle. See, there it is again. Triangle. The border of the Alaskan Triangle stretches from Barrow at the north coast to Anchorage and to Juneau across the southern coast and includes vast areas of largely uninhabited wilderness. Sprawling forests and a desolate tundra are clearly not the safest places in the world for humans to, put down roots. Hundreds of search and rescue missions conducted every year by the Alaskan State Troopers rarely find a trace of bodies of people that went missing in the area. The triangle came into the public's attention when the then U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs' airplane vanished somewhere between Anchorage and Juneau on October 16, 1972. The disappearance triggered one of the country's largest search and rescue operations ever, involving 40 military aircraft, 50 civilian planes, and 39 days of searching an area of about 32,000 square miles. The search found nothing. No wreckage, no debris, no human remains, nothing. On November 24, 1972, the search was suspended after 39 days. Disappearances without a trace are not unusual in this region. Since 1988, more than 16,000 people have vanished in the Alaskan Triangle. This contributes to an annual filing of roughly 4 missing person reports for every 1,000 people in Alaska, more than twice the national average.
Want to get away? A lot of people do. Some people like to disappear, some don't go willingly, while some just do and nobody knows what happened. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to The World According to Briggs. Let's take a look at places that have a lot of missing people. A couple years back we did some videos on this subject, and every once in a while I get requests for more. Today's the day. According to the National Missing and Unidentified Persons Database, which is funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, more than 600,000 persons of all ages go missing every single year, and approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are recovered every year. Seems like an awful lot. A vast majority of missing persons cases are resolved relatively quickly. For example, in 2016, there were 651,000 missing person cases reported. More than 649,000 of them were resolved within a year. In the last decade, there has been a steep drop in the amount of missing persons reported thanks to better technology like cell phones and Facebook. Still, more than 17,000 missing person cases and about 13,000 unidentified body cases remain open in the United States. Today's list is about states that have the highest per capita of missing persons. If we did it on just the sheer amount of missing people every single year, California would top that list by a large margin because of the insane amount of people living in that state. They just have so many people there, the chances of them having a high number are pretty easy to accomplish. All right, let's take a look at what we found. Number 10, Montana. Montana has a hard time keeping tabs on people. They have a lot of open land and a lot of places to stash bodies if the need arises. Montana has a lot of indigenous people living in the state. So it should be no surprise that 26% of all missing person cases in Montana are Native American. Most states have seen an overall drop in cases, while in 2020, Montana jumped 22%. Yeah, they're one of the only states that's still rising. And it isn't like a weird amount, almost epidemic level, that Native Americans are missing there. There's some pretty sad cases. In Montana, there's 6.8 people missing every year for every 100,000 residents. Number 9, New Mexico. New Mexico has a lot of open desert for bodies and a lot of people that want to get out of the state. They have a solid history of teenage runaways in New Mexico, and this has helped push the numbers up over the years. They also have a lot of alien abduction stories that come out of the land of enchantment. I really don't believe in that, but I find myself watching or listening to Joe Rogan's podcast whenever he gets an alien expert on. I don't know why. I don't really believe in it, but I'm just amazed by it. I don't know if I'm amazed that the people are so into this, or I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Who knows? 6.8 people go missing from the land of enchantment for every 100,000 residents. Number 8, Hawaii. The Aloha state is sort of strange when it comes to missing persons. If you look at it one way, they're an island, so where are you going to go? If you want to leave an island, chances are there's some sort of paper trail, plane tickets, ship's manifest, captain's log, whatever. So if you leave the island, they should be able to find out you did at least. But then you have the fact that it's an island. It's surrounded by water, which, that's even better than the desert if you're trying to stash a body, right? 7.5 people for every 100,000 go missing in Hawaii. Number 7, Wyoming. Wyoming is another state that has a bunch of open space. Wyoming is another state also that has an elevated teen runaway stat. I guess when you're in a state that would be considered very boring to most 16 to 21-year-olds, they start bouncing pretty quick. When I worked at Netflix, it seemed like every attractive 19 to 20-year-old young lady that worked there fled Wyoming or Idaho for some reason. They all seemed to have left when they were like 17 or 18, and it was so boring, I had to get out of there. That's their story every single time. 7.8 people for every 100,000 go missing in Wyoming. Number 6, Maine. I don't know what is going on with the rural roads of Maine, but about 70% of missing folks were last seen walking down rural roads, including Jeremy Alex. Missing since 2004, he was last seen walking down a country road, reportedly in a delusional state. If you saw him in a delusional state, wouldn't you slow down and roll down your window a little bit and ask him if he's okay or something? These people just saw him and kept going, I guess. Just, you see someone like that, you should stop and, ask them if they're okay, ask them if they need help, something. I mean, unless they have an axe in their hand and they're muttering red rum, over and over and over. 8.1 people go missing for every 100,000 people in Maine. Number 5, Vermont. Vermont has this thing called the Bennington Triangle. This is an area in southwestern Vermont where a number of people went missing between 1945 and 1950. That was the area back then. People still go missing in the Green Mountain State on a weekly basis. But back in the day when people were missing from the triangle, one of them included college student Paula Jean Weldon, 18 years old. She disappeared while out on a walk. After finishing her shift in the Bennington College dining hall, Weldon returned to her room, changed into walking clothes, and headed out for a trail they called the Long Trail. What she was wearing was good for the weather that the area was experiencing then during the day, but definitely not for the drop in the temperature that would happen overnight, so she was only going to be out for a couple hours. And she was a local, so she would have been aware of this. While on her walk, she had come across an older couple and exchanged pleasantries, and then saw a group of hikers and asked for some directions, and then off she went. She may have been seen by some people camping off the trail, but they weren't sure if it was her or not. No trace of her was ever found after possibly passing this camp. They have no idea what happened to this girl. Now, there's all kinds of rumors that went over the year, and back in the day, they used to always assume that a young girl had run off with some boy. It's hard to track people back then, and that's what they assumed. A lot of people thought she went to Canada, but whatever the reason, no one ever heard or saw this girl again. In the Green Mountain State, 8.7 people go missing for every 100,000. Number 4, Washington. It should be no surprise that Washington has a lot of missing people. The Evergreen State seems to pump out serial killers, preppers, hermits, and people living off the grid. People have a habit here of just walking into the Evergreens and never being seen or heard from again. There's a lot of Bigfoot people out there too. Maybe Bigfoot's abducting them. They talk about that on Joe Rogan's podcast sometimes too. Of the people missing from Washington, one is Ruthie Fond Kindness. She vanished at the age of 21 on February 7th, 2011. Like so many other Native American girls, she just disappeared. The young woman had been released from police custody in Federal Way, Washington for an outstanding traffic warrant. Just hours before her disappearance, Ruthie, after she got out of jail, called her mother from a payphone at the Paradise Bowling Alley in Parkland, Washington. Ruthie has never been seen or heard from again. Like Vermont, 8.7 people go missing for every 100,000 in Washington. Number 3, Oregon. Oregon is very similar to Washington in many respects. It has a lot of trees, a lot of homeless, a lot of runaways, and a lot of preppers. I don't think we're as big into Bigfoot as they are, though. Gotta watch more Joe Rogan to find out. Every couple weeks, it seems like they find skeletal remains in the woods of Oregon. Just last week, they found the remains of some guy who was reported missing in 1979. Kenneth Lee Bell. Bell was born in 1957. He was 22 when he was reported missing by his mother. He had been en route from the Bay Area of California to Washington State when he went missing. Bell had worked in the timber industry in Washington, Oregon at the time he vanished. He used to visit Portland during that time, and he wasn't found too far from Portland, Oregon, maybe less than an hour's drive in the woods. The police are at a dead end because nobody outside his remaining family remember him. He's been missing that long that everyone forgot about him. You know, it's not like he was murdered or anything like that they know of at the time. So his friends or people that knew him didn't, you register that. When someone you know gets killed, you kind of carry that the rest of your life. Well, they just thought maybe he'd quit showing up for work and all that stuff and no Facebook back in the day. So people forgot about him. They have no idea what happened to this dude. In Oregon, 10.4 people go missing for every 100,000. It's quite a jump from 8.7 in Washington. Number 2, Arizona. And back to the desert we go. Arizona shares a border and a lot of problems with Mexico. This is another solid jump in the per capita of missing. I read a few things where they kind of said that a lot of people that go missing in Arizona are really missing in Mexico, so it's incredibly hard to figure out what happened to these people. A lot of times they just find like a abandoned car with blood in it and stuff like that. That's very common there, so they of course assume the worst. There are a lot of drug-related disappearances in Arizona. Again, especially the closer you get to the border, the higher that number goes. They also have a high amount of kids missing in the Grand Canyon state, including Mikkel Briggs, the 11-year-old Mesa girl who vanished on January 2nd, 1999, waiting for the ice cream truck. I remember that being on the news. So sad. 13 people for every 100,000 go missing in Arizona. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we got another channel called On This Day. I'll leave a link for that below, and some other videos that are similar to this one you might be interested in. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Alaska. This one is a serious jump in the amount of people missing here. Alaska has a lot of open space and not many people. There's a lot of places to get lost, a lot of roads people may drive off of, into cliffs, into rivers, into lakes, whatever. That's just some of the things. People get lost in the woods here all the time. Some people willingly just disappear into the wilderness of Alaska. It's kind of common. I wouldn't say common, but it isn't surprising when they figure that's what someone did. Alaska attracts a certain kind of person, not just loners and misfits, but explorers and adventurers as well. Anyone drawn to the wild or wide open spaces often end up in Alaska, kind of like Rick Hills. On February 24th, 2004, Rick had been home from his oil rig job for a few days when he decided to drive to Anchorage, about 150 miles away, to get his paycheck. Rick did pick up his check, and then he disappeared. His truck was found 2 days later, plowed into a snowbank in the town of Sterling, about 15 miles away from his home in Soldotna. I've been in Sterling. Hardly anyone lives there. It's near a place called Funny River, which is one of my favorite places, just because of the name. And I can't imagine how sparsely populated it was back in 2004. I was there in 2019. There's hardly anyone there. Anyway, the keys were in the ignition and his driver's license was on the front seat along with $292 in his center console. Rick's tracks in the snow showed that his right foot was dragging like he had some sort of injury. Went straight into the woods. About a quarter mile from the car, he'd come to a house and walked up to the back porch, probably looking for help, find someone, something. Guess he didn't find anyone because he wandered onto an abandoned airstrip, and there his footprints ended. Search dogs lost the scent, and Rick just kind of disappeared. Nobody knows what happened after he hit that airstrip. He was 35 years old. In Alaska, 41.8 people go missing for every 100,000 residents. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go forth, have a great day, be nice to each other.
In this second part, we're going to take a look at dangerous and mysterious places. Let's take a look.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the world according to Briggs. I am Briggs, and I kind of like my neighbors. In my old house, I didn't really like my neighbors, but I like my neighbors. Do you hate your neighbors? A study published by Home.com showed that 30% of all Americans dislike their neighbors and have had, at a minimum, a full-blown argument with said neighbors. Another 40% said they avoid their neighbors, while 10% said they would like to do the nasty with the neighbor's spouse. A lot of people wish they could live in a ghost town for these reasons: no one to fight with, avoid, or catch stooping your wife. Sort of like the people that prefer to live in the secluded towns in my past video series. Ghost towns are sprinkled all over the United States, with a few states like Colorado having so many they'll get their own video in this series. This is one of those videos that people have been asking for a while, and I like to keep you guys happy, seeing that without you, I'm just some dude that travels, films, and says stupid crap. Ghost towns happen for a multitude of reasons. Most commonly, they had some sort of industry like mining or manufacturing that for whatever reason went away. With no way to make money, people leave, hence a ghost town. Unless you're of course Thurman, West Virginia, they got no jobs and they got 5 residents hunting squirrel or something, or moonshine. I don't know what they're doing there, but they're still living there. So why don't we find out where these vacant towns are and how they became vacant in my top 10 ghost towns in America. Number 10. Centralia, Pennsylvania. In 1962, Centralia was a bustling coal mining town that had just experienced a fire in one of their coal mines. No big deal. Life went on. In 1979, locals started becoming aware of some weird things happening around there, like, smoke coming out of the ground, cracks in the ground, things like that. But the scale of the problem really wasn't known till a gas station owner, who was also the mayor at the time, John Coddington, inserted a dipstick into one of the underground tanks to check fuel levels. When he withdrew it, he noticed it was kind of hot. He lowered a thermometer into the tank on a string and was shocked to find out that the temperature of the gasoline in the tank was about 172 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, the fire still burns. In 1981, Centralia was condemned by the state and the city was evacuated. A few stubborn residents still reside in Centralia. The state has allowed them to live the rest of their lives out there. However, once they pass, their property will be claimed by eminent domain. In 2017, 5 homes and about 6 or 7 people remained. You can go see it now, but I'm sure eventually it'll be closed off. Not sure how, but they will stop people from going to Centralia eventually. Number 9. Bannack, Montana. Bannack was founded in 1860 as a gold mining town and was actually the Montana Territory capital for 1 year. They moved the capital to Virginia City, another mining town that wasn't as remote and also didn't have a sheriff that was running a gang that robbed and dispatched people heading west. Yeah, that was a thing. The sheriff's crime spree came to an end like most criminals back in the Old West. Let's just say it involved a rope. At its peak, Bannack had a population of about 10,000 people. This was one of the longest standing mining towns in Montana. Most of the residents had left by 1950, and the last residents actually left in 1970, so not terribly far back. Today, the state has made Bannack an official state park with more than 50 buildings still standing. This place looks like a place a Western was filmed. And to younger people that have no idea what a Western is, think Clint Eastwood back in the 1970s. Go ahead and Google it. Put it on pause and go ahead and Google it. Number 8. Old Cahaba, Alabama. Cahaba was Alabama's first state capital from 1820 to 1825. Again, what is the deal with these towns turning into ghost towns after they moved the state capital? Good thing for the United States, Philly and New York didn't close up shop after they settled on D.C., right? This is Alabama's most famous ghost town. It was used as a trading and transport center for cotton before the Civil War and as a village for slaves after the war. Nearly all the residents had skipped town by 1900, and now it's pretty well maintained. It's a nice place to go visit. There's a lot of videos on it on YouTube. Although the area is no longer inhabited, the Alabama Historical Commission maintains the site as Old Cahaba Archaeological Park. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. The town, and later abandoned site, has been the setting for many ghost stories, as you can imagine. Any place that's got this kind of history is gonna have some ghost tales. Kind of like Scooby-Doo, but a little more realistic. A widely known one tells of a ghostly orb that kind of floats around this area that used to be an old garden maze. The old garden maze is no longer there, but apparently the orb is there on Friday the 13th at about I'm just kidding, I don't know when it's there. But anyway, it's supposed to be there and it's a glowing orb. Number 7, Orla, Texas. Orla was a town designed as a stop on the Pecos River Railroad. Of course, after the automobile was invented, the train fell out of fashion and Orla was left to decay. Orla was founded in 1890. The population reached a high of around 250 people when oil, gas, and sulfur brought more workers into the region in the 1960s. Now here's a real oddity. This hardly ever happens to ghost towns. Orla has sprung back to life. I'm not kidding. Back as early as 2014, there were still just old buildings that were run down and a historical site marker. But since 2015 or so, construction companies have moved in and started putting up buildings and warehouses. Oil in the area has brought people back. Now it is still registered as a ghost town, but it has a truck stop and a few other businesses now. It's kind of weird. This place is out in the middle of nowhere. I guess if there's money to be made, people will show up. Money is like teenage boy hormones. It brings you to some really strange places you wouldn't normally go to. Number 6, Bombay Beach, California. Bombay Beach became a vacation destination in the 1940s and 50s, and it's in the middle of the desert on what is known as the Salton Sea, which is actually a lake. Families and individuals lived here and vacationed here for many years. After local farmers used the lake for dumping, the water became so toxic that it had a putrid odor to it, and it killed all the fish living in the lake. I mean, all of them. Nothing lives in that lake now. There are boats that were just abandoned and left in the mud. It really looks like all the humans just got up one day and left. This place is an environmental nightmare. You can go there to this day and see dead birds that never got the memo about not drinking the water of the Salton Sea. This was, of course, way too toxic for humans, and quickly most of the residents just moved on. Left their homes there. It's sad. It really is. Been by there a few times in my life. Actually, one of the strangest dudes I have ever known in my life, he lived there for a while. Like, when it was abandoned. Strange guy. Number 5, Goldfield, Arizona. Goldfield was discovered in the late 1800s and had run out of gold before the turn of the century, and as humans do when there's no gold or pumpkin spice lattes, they move on. An attempt was made to revive the city in 1921 when it was renamed Youngsburg, which sucked. Goldfield to Youngsburg? What genius decided that was a good idea? Probably some dude that had been out in the sun too long without a hat or sunblock and was getting all dizzy and said, "Oh, we name it Youngsburg or something," and then it stuck. In reality, it didn't matter. It was abandoned once again just 5 years later in 1926. In 1940, the U.S. military was training in the area and started a grass fire that burned half the town down. Today, it's a tourist attraction with a museum, saloon, and more. There's actually a guy that's considered the mayor of the town, but there's no real residents. So I find that strange. Talk about giving yourself a title. If we're out giving out titles, I'm the king of YouTube, by the way, if anyone's asking. Number 4, Iditarod, Alaska. The town of Iditarod was named after the Iditarod River, not the dog race. On Christmas Day 1908, prospector John Beaton and Bill Dykeman found gold on Otter Creek, a tributary to the Iditarod River. And of course, when stories of gold or pumpkin spice latte start floating around, people show up. Miners started building a gold field, and a small camp was built and later known as Flat. People and supplies traveled to the gold fields by boat from the Yukon River and up the Iditarod River to the current town site. Iditarod first appeared on the 1920 U.S. Census as an incorporated city of just 50 residents. The boom had already played out, so, there was only like 50 people then. At its peak, they suspect it was closer to about 300 people. They're not totally sure. In 1931, it was disincorporated, leaving just a single resident by the 1940 census. Iditarod never appeared on the census again. And no, it's not on any Alaskan cruise. I checked. Number 3, Rhyolite, Nevada. Rhyolite is within Death Valley, and like many ghost towns, Rhyolite was a booming mining town in the early 1900s. In its heyday, the city had a hospital, a stock exchange, and even an opera house. They had about 8,000 residents at one point, but by the 1920s, almost every resident had left thanks to natural and financial disasters. In the 1920 census, they had one resident left, and he was in his 90s. When they asked him why he had never left, he said, "I don't know." Number 2, Thurman, West Virginia. Thurman makes it on back-to-back lists. Good job, Thurman. I don't know why I just said that. The 5 remaining residents will never hear it. I don't think they can get internet. Thurman is located in southwestern West Virginia. The city's purpose was originally being a stop on a rail line and for local mining operations. The city racked up over $4 million in freight revenue over its lifetime. However, when the automotive industry took off, it kind of killed Thurman. Today, a few residents still reside here, but it's still considered a ghost town. I know, it just seems weird. If there's people still living there, it's really not a ghost town, but they still have it registered as one. Anyway, moving on. Here's a strange fact about Thurman, if in fact it is a fact. One of the 2 hotels in Thurman, back in the day, is known for being where the longest game of poker ever was played. According to Ripley's Believe It or Not, this card game lasted 14 years. I hope it wasn't a strip poker game. Could you imagine that? I'm sure at some point someone would have yelled, "Come on, lady, I've been at it 5 years and all I've seen is an elbow." And number 1, Calico, California. Here's one I've been to a few too many times in my life, and I don't know why my parents took us there like 3 or 4 times as kids. My younger brother and I believe they were looking for a good place to leave our older sister. Sadly, our dreams never were answered, no matter how many birthday wishes, wishbones, and coins into wells I wasted on it. Calico was a booming new city in 1881 when silver was found in the mines there. By 1890, the town had hit its population peak with about 3,500 residents, and that same year, the Silver Purchase Act was enacted and drove down the price of silver. Calico silver mines were no longer economically viable. Today, it's a historical landmark and tourist attraction. You can pan for gold, take a ride on the Calico-Odessa Railroad, watch people argue in the parking lot, or explore Maggie Mine, the only mine in America that's safe for visitors. That argue in the parking lot thing is something I saw as a kid, and I always remembered it. The couple was having a screaming match in the parking lot with a bunch of people around, and if I remember correctly, the man didn't want to leave and the lady did. I don't know if he wanted to stay like forever or just longer that day. Maybe he wanted to get a cheap home loan. Nothing like having a mortgage on a ghost town, right? Calico these days is mostly used for a backdrop of commercials like Geico and, other type of commercials. But they still get visitors, and you could see it from the highway. So you can see the sign. They got Calico written on the hillside, which kind of interesting. I remember seeing that as a kid all the time as we drove by. I'd look for it the whole time we'd drive through the desert. It was weird. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to The World According to Briggs, your virtual tour guide. Today we're taking a trip to some of the most mysterious places in the United States. There's a lot of different types of mysterious places. Some are natural, others are man-made, maybe haunted, aliens, some have secrets, while others just can't be explained. For whatever reason, mysteries and mysterious places always grab our attention. The unknown is very interesting to most people. Today's video is about some of the most mysterious locations in the United States. We have some great ones, and I gotta tell you, as I researched this video, I kept finding more and more locations with really cool things to talk about. Some are only known locally, and in those cases it's hard to find a lot of details and things like pictures and video. But really, it's sort of true with some of the ones on this list when it comes to video. So we might be dealing with a lot of pictures and aerial shots of the area, not the specific location. We'll do what we can. Okay, let's get rolling. We'll see what made the list. Number 10, Ringing Rock Park, Pennsylvania. Just across the Delaware River from Milford, New Jersey in Pennsylvania, you'll find the Ringing Rock Park. This is a 128-acre park in Bucks County, Pennsylvania that has a large field of mysterious boulders that, when struck, sound like bells, as if they're hollow or made of metal. They don't sound like rocks at all. Only about a third of the rocks ring, and they call those the live rocks. And those that don't are known as dead rocks. At least they thought they were dead. In 1965, a group of scientists crushed, broke, sanded, sliced, and had lunch on the rocks. After performing numerous tests and a series of lunch dates that resulted in one hookup, they found out that all the rocks actually do ring. The dead ones ring at tones lower than the human ear can actually pick up. Any dog from the area would have said, "I told you so," if they were able to talk. Scientists have determined that the stones are made of a volcanic substance called diabase. I think I pronounced that right. But there's no explanation for the 8-acre field being situated on a hillside, not at the bottom of a hill or a valley where you would normally find a rock field or something like this. Each summer, hundreds of visitors flock here with hammers in hand to perform their own rock concert. Yes! Comedy gold! Number 9, Energy Vortexes, Sedona, Arizona. When most people hear the name Sedona, they think of Sedona, Arizona and its amazing red stone rock formations. I think of a foreign student named Sedona in the 6th grade that whipped me with a jump rope. Not saying I was into it, but I do miss her. Anyway, Sedona is also known as a spiritual hotspot, not just for the Native Americans from the area. Hippies and your average Joe that read one too many books on personal growth find their way here to admire the landscape and get a quick energy boost. The energy vortexes people claim can boost healing healing, give mystical enlightenment, and a general feeling of well-being. Now, this is due to a strong energy produced by these vortexes. Even the trees here twist in a very unusual way. A lot of people claim it's the energy vortexes. This is also a hot spot for the yoga types to have retreats. People point out those twisted trees and they start having little yoga sessions around them to kind of, I don't know, they want to twist themselves like the tree or whatever, but they're trying to gather the energy from these vortexes. The four main vortexes in Sedona are the Airport Mesa Vortex, Boynton, I believe it's called Canyon Vortex, Bell Rock Vortex, Cathedral Rock Vortex. The origin and the nature of these vortexes still remain a mystery. Number 8, Coral Castle, Homestead, Florida. In Homestead, Florida stands a remarkable structure that was created because of a broken heart. Latvian immigrant Edward Leetskulkin built the Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida after his fiancée left him on the eve of their wedding. The mysterious thing about the castle isn't why Edward built it, it's how Edward built it. Edward was a small man. He was 5 foot tall and maybe weighed 100 pounds, and he didn't use anything other than homemade tools. There was no electrical devices. He didn't get any help. He did it by himself with homemade tools. Did a broken heart give this little man the strength and drive to build the castle? He built it by himself using 1,000 tons of boulders, some of the boulders weighing as much as 30 tons alone. It's documented that no one ever witnessed Edward working on the castle. Some have said that he used supernatural power. Leetskulkin would only say that he knew the secrets used to build the ancient pyramids. He said that he learned the secrets of making objects weightless. Researchers and historians say whatever he was doing had something to do with this little black box seen in photos that he had mounted on a tripod crane he had built out of logs. Nobody knows what's in the box or why it's affixed to these tripods, but most feel it holds the answers how he created this place. Leetskulkin died in 1950 and we'll never know. Nobody knows anything about the black box, where it went, what was in it. That's the biggest mystery of this whole thing. It still stands to this day. Number 7, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Weston, West Virginia. In 1864, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum started accepting patients. If you've ever visited West Virginia, you can imagine there was a line out the door for people looking to get in. At first, everything was fine and dandy. People were getting the help they needed, at least help for the time. I mean, lobotomies and electric shock have long, been deemed unnecessary, but hey, it was cutting edge back then. As the years went on, it started getting more and more patients that far exceeded what it was originally designed for. By the 1950s, the facility that was designed to hold 250 patients had 2,400 patients. That is about the time it really hit the fan. The asylum became something out of a horror movie. No heat in the winters, sweltering summers, people sleeping on the floors and in storage rooms, unexplained disappearances, caging, and severe mistreatment of some of the patients. At some point, attacks on the staff became the norm, and patients started making fires in an attempt to burn the place down. And get this, in true West Virginia fashion, it wasn't shut down until 1994. Yeah, so we're talking from 1950 to 1994, this thing was a total nightmare, and they kept it open. But it's believed that it's still inhabited by the souls of the patients. If you want to check it out yourself, take a ghost tour of the facilities. Yeah, they have those. Number 6, Skinwalker Ranch, Utah. The name Skinwalker Ranch can warn you of two different things: supernatural hoodoo voodoo weirdness, or a nudist colony filled with retirees. If you're like me, you're probably struggling with deciding which one is scarier. Luckily for us, this is the supernatural type, and we can press on. Supernatural and mysterious activities have been reported at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah for many years. Visitors to the 480-acre compound have reported seeing shape-shifting creatures and hearing loud underground noises, along with the occasional floating orb of death. Now, I added the death part for dramatic effect, just so you know. According to Native American lore, the site is full of evil spirits and dark spiritual energy. The ranch has been nicknamed the UFO Ranch because of its 50-year history of odd events that are said to have had taken place there. But that 50-year thing is what's documented. There are many stories and legends about early settlers and the Ute people from the nearby reservation experiencing strange events in the area. All in all, the Skinwalker Ranch is creepy as hell. Number 5, the White Eagle Saloon, Portland, Oregon. Here in Portland, Oregon, we have the White Eagle Saloon and its checkered past. Originally a hub for Portland's Polish immigrants, the White Eagle Saloon wore many hats over the years. Saloon, meeting hall, hotel, a place of worship, brothel, and now it's a great bar with great live music. The name White Eagle is in reference to the old Polish flag, which had a white eagle on it. This place has some serious stories. A prostitute killed by a jealous lover, people dragged through basement tunnels, a waitress carried down basement steps by an invisible force. These are the stories and legends that pop up whenever the White Eagle is mentioned. The details normally become more graphic and gruesome as the years go on. There's more than just good storytelling going on here. Ghost hunters who have investigated the place report a sensation of violence and death in the basement and a deep well of sadness on the second floor. The White Eagle first popped up in the waterfront of Portland in 1905. At the time, the area was crowded with hundreds of recent arrivals from Great Britain, Scandinavia, the Balkans, Russia, the Mediterranean, and the Far East. They worked on the docks, in the Union Pacific Railroad shops, and in the neighboring factories and mills built along the Willamette's east bank. When the workday ended, people filled Russell Street and it became alive as people walked down it and then disappeared into dozens of bars lining the street. There was a trolley line that ran up Mississippi Avenue and stopped at Russell Street near the White Eagle. Upon the approach to Russell Street, the conductor would always yell, "Next stop, bucket of blood," a nickname earned from all the fierce and frequent brawls that erupted in and around the saloon. Two Polish immigrants opened up the White Eagle to offer other Polish immigrants a place after work for recreation. Pool, poker, liquor, beer, and with the right connection and the proper amount of money, patrons could indulge in the brothel upstairs or the opium den downstairs. The basement had a tunnel connected to the underground network leading to the waterfront. Legend has it that through the subterranean passageway, intoxicated patrons were knocked over the head and drugged down the tunnels to the ships. There are reports of women crying upstairs and people screaming in the basement after hours. This place is spooky. I went in there before I knew it was all haunted and everything like that. I haven't been back since. Number 4. The Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Los Angeles. Now, growing up in the Los Angeles area, you knew that this place was creepy. There's tons of stories. Almost every Hollywood murder seems to be in or around this place, even if it wasn't. They always seem to end up here. It's how legends go, I guess. The hotel was built in 1926 in what is known as the Golden Era of Los Angeles architecture, and it was named after the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. It is a beautiful building. I've seen it many, many times. Never been inside, but I've driven by and been in the area, and it's a beautiful building. It was actually the model of the Disneyland ride Tower of Terror. The place is haunted. It is said that Marilyn Monroe still haunts the halls here and still occupies her suite of 1200. A lot of guests that have stayed there say that they see Marilyn Monroe in the mirror in that room. Guests have also reported mysterious trumpet music that's believed to be played by the spirit of Montgomery Clift. Now, I don't know if they've ever tracked him down and found the ghost playing the trumpet and asked him who he was, but people are pretty sure it's Montgomery Clift. I guess he used to like to practice in Suite 928. Others involve a little girl in a blue dress named Caroline that tries to motion you down the hallway, and if you go down the hallway, she wants to show you her dead parents, which she killed with a sharpened candy cane, like a preteen prison shank. Just kidding, I made that part up. But anyway, people have seen this little girl in a blue dress, and they do know her name's Caroline. Another thing that's kind of weird is the hotel operator calls and asks if you need help in your room, and then they call back downstairs and nobody called the room. It's just weird. Number 3, the Taos Hum, Taos, New Mexico. Some residents and visitors in Taos, New Mexico have for years been hearing a mysterious and faint hum that they can't seem to get away from. One lady said she tried listening to the Bee Gees for 24 hours straight to drown out the sound. She said it didn't work, but now she hums Staying Alive whenever she's trying to concentrate, and her neighbors hate her. What's weird about this one is only about 2% of Taos residents and visitors report hearing the sound. Some believe it's caused by unusual acoustics of the desert surroundings. They also think it's just delusional people. Some think it's a secret government mind control program. Conspiracies are many and conclusions are few. It has been described as a whirl, a hum, a buzz, and whether it's psychological, natural, or supernatural, no one has yet been able to locate the sound and its origin and anything about it. This is what it sounds like. A couple years back, they did a survey of people who heard the hum, and they all described it differently, which would indicate that it's more subjective than objective or completely nonsense. Either way, the unexplained noises are creepy. Number 2, the East Bay Walls, Northern California. Up in the East Bay Hills near San Francisco, there's a series of rock walls that have fascinated people for well over 100 years. The East Bay Walls are also known as the Berkeley Walls, in case you do some research and think you're looking at two different things. You're not. They are strange and a total mystery. Nobody knows who built them, why they built them, or what purpose did they serve. They're a meter high and a meter wide in places. The walls are anywhere from a few meters to over a mile long. Some rocks are the size of a basketball, while others are large boulders weighing more than a ton. Parts of the wall look like they were just just thrown together, while other parts look like they were carefully constructed. The age of the walls is unknown, but it appears to experts that they were put in place anywhere from 150 to 500 years ago. So that's a big difference. So much about these walls is mystery, and it's up for debate. One thing you learn once you start digging into these walls is they have fascinated people for a very long time. The Oakland Tribune had a story about the walls on October 15th of 1916, where they mentioned people have been guessing and investigating these walls for many years. No actual date there. Anyway, people have speculated that it was Chinese explorers that may have gotten here many years before Europeans landed on the East Coast. I think that one's kind of just because they had the Great Wall and, they figured Chinese just build walls. That's an old theory. Other theories went on about a lost civilization. I went down the rabbit hole while researching this, and probably the easiest explanation and most realistic is ranching. Maybe these walls were in place to control the movement of sheep or cattle, but holes appear in that theory as well. It's like, why aren't any of them square or connected so that it keeps everything in? They're just all walls, it seems like. One thing is for sure, we don't know how, we don't know who, and we don't know why. And it'll probably remain that way for ever. And number 1. Underwater Stonehenge, Lake Michigan. Everybody has heard of Stonehenge in the UK. It's one of the most visited places in England, if you don't count the pub. Did you know we sort of have our own here in the United States? Most people will never visit it because it's 40 feet under Lake Michigan. One of these stones that's in the underwater Stonehenge has a carving of a mastodon, or snuffleupagus, from Sesame Street. I was on the fence on which one it is, but I'm sort of leaning towards snuffleupagus. Not many people have visited this one, including myself, because it's underwater. So there isn't a lot of footage of this one, and the footage they do have isn't great. So here's the pictures, and then I'm going to show you some drone footage of Lake Michigan while I talk. The best explanation as to how these got here, there's a lot of different explanations. The structure could have been created during the last ice age when the lake bed was dry. They figure it was some sort of game drive, which is a structure that's been used throughout history to drive herding animals towards hunters. That's also one of the theories for the East Bay walls at number 2 on this list. For whatever reason, there's a circular structure with apparently a mastodon on it in Lake Michigan, 40 feet underwater, which is just weird. Many people, however, question whether the rocks were purposely placed or it's just a random occurrence. But there's also one that's very similar in Lake Huron. So yeah, I don't think it's random myself. It doesn't look like we'll ever know the origins of this Stonehenge, or at least until Snuffleupagus spills the beans. Either way, we'll probably never find out. Alright, so that is our list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget all the links below. Share my videos with your friends on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram, whatever you want to do. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to The World According to Briggs. Today we're going to do a list that was inspired by things we learned while researching our last video about forbidden places. What we learned was there are a lot of strange islands with weird and mysterious stories in the world. You won't find some of the mainstream weird islands that have been done to death on YouTube and different websites like Easter Island and North Sentinel Island. Those are weird, don't get me wrong, but I want to do videos where you learn something that you don't already know, hopefully. Sure, some of you know about these, but a majority of you won't. But the ones about Easter Island and North Sentinel Island are worth watching, so if you get a chance, definitely watch them. Alright, let's check out some freaky islands. Number 10, Clipperton Island. Clipperton Island is a coral atoll south of Mexico and west of Guatemala in the Pacific, and it was named after a pirate. It's had a few owners over the years: France, pirates, Mexico, and the United States at one point. And the United States wanted it so they could collect bird poop. I'm not kidding. Mexico took possession in 1897 and allowed the British to come collect the poop for a while. Around 1910, Mexico decided they wanted again, and they sent a dozen or so soldiers with their wives and some servants to live on the island. These people started having kids on the bird poop island. You know, nothing gets my motor running like an albatross dropping a deuce right outside my hut. Now, the island had another resident, and by all accounts, he was an angry old lighthouse keeper named Victor Alvarez. Now, they were getting supplies on a regular basis. In 1914, supply ships stopped coming due to the Mexican Civil War, and hard times set upon the island and its people. The people living on the island started to die off until only 3 wives and their children remained, along with the lighthouse keeper, who was still pissy by all accounts. Alvarez, the lighthouse keeper, seeing that all the men were dead and he figured he could take a couple women in a fistfight, seized control of the survivors and declared himself king of the island. Yeah, I'm not kidding. He declared himself king of the island. He spent the next few years terrorizing the women and children of Clipperton Island until they'd had enough and killed him. Yeah, the women got together and they killed him. They killed the king. In 1917, the last surviving islanders were 3 women and 8 malnourished children. They were rescued by an American ship. Ownership of the island reverted back to France, which manned the lighthouse on Clipperton Island, but after World War II, it was completely abandoned. There is now only the occasional scientific expedition to the atoll. Technically, France owns it, but they don't go there. They don't have anything to do with it. At least 3 times since 1960, people have become castaways on this little speck of land in the Pacific. Number 9. Partridge Island, Canada. Canada's Partridge Island is located off the coast of St. John's Harbor in New Brunswick, and it was used as a quarantine station starting back in 1830. Canada made all newcomers not coming from England stay on the island until they found out that they didn't have any diseases or they weren't Irish, apparently. Yeah, back in the day, most places didn't really like the Irish showing up. The Great Famine of the 1840s hit and thousands flooded into Canada. 2,500 Irish immigrants were quarantined on Partridge Island. Canadians feared Irish and others would be spreading cholera, typhus, smallpox, scarlet fever, yellow fever, and measles. Newly arrived immigrants were subject to kerosene showers, followed by showers of hot water. Many were sick, and Partridge Island couldn't handle the huge number of people coming in during the peak of the Irish potato famine. The influx of thousands of Irish earned the island the nickname Canada's Emerald Island, because Ireland's called the Emerald Island. Got it? Okay, moving on. Quarantined immigrants who've died of disease were buried on the island, and on one occasion that they know of, it was a mass grave. The grave, they say, has greener grass than any other place on the island. It was closed in 1941. Partridge Island became a mysterious place, visited only through photographs. Now, I saw one video where these guys were saying that they found out there's a $5,000 fine if you go to the island, and there's like this little rock pathway out there. Not even a pathway, it's like a jetty that goes out to it. You could walk it. It takes about 45 minutes to walk this thing, and it's kind of rough, so, it's not wheelchair accessible by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, if you go to this thing, you can get a $5,000 fine. Number 8. The island of Daxa. The island of Daxa is in the Adriatic Sea near Dubrovnik, Croatia, and it was home to a Franciscan monastery from 1281 to sometime around the mid-1800s. If you don't know what this place's history is, you'd probably look at the island and go, hey, I'd like to visit there. It looks comforting. It looks relaxing. Then you find out this is where they used to take people for the big dirt nap, and you start looking at Bermuda instead. The small island has a villa and an ancient lighthouse. After the Franciscans closed up shop, the island didn't get much use, even less use after the activities of 1944. At the height of World War II, locals rounded up around 50 men suspected of being Nazi sympathizers, including the local mayor and a local priest. They were never seen again. They were taken to Daxa and executed without a trial. In 2009, 2 mass graves were unearthed on the island. DNA samples were taken from the victims of the Daxa massacre, and some were identified, some were not. In 2010, they finally got the proper burial 66 years after what went down. There's tales of ghosts, hauntings, the sound of crying coming from the island, people crying out for justice. This little island is for sale, and no one's even put in a bid on it. Number 7. Socotra Island. Socotra Island is off the coast of Yemen, and it looks like a location from an episode of The Mandalorian if the writer had eaten some mushrooms right before he started writing the script. Temperatures here are extremely high, and they have some of the strangest landscapes on the planet, with mountains, giant cliffs, strange plants, and a few hermits that live on this remote island, including one hermit that throws rocks at you if you try and visit him. If you're a female, though, he won't throw rocks at you. He'll actually invite you into his hut. Don't shake hands with him, ladies. He'll assume you're married. That creates a whole nother problem. A third of its plant life can be found no place else on the earth. 70% of the island has been set aside as a national park. Now, they have one tree here that has crimson red sap, which earned it the nickname Dragon's Blood Tree. The tree looks like it has its roots on top instead of in the ground, so totally weird looking, like it's from some far off planet in a galaxy far, far away. The only mammals on this island are bats, dogs, and humans. Now, this was really weird. They did this DNA testing thing with them. The native residents here have a DNA possessed by no other people on the planet, and some contend that this is actually where the biblical Garden of Eden was located. Weird island. Number 6. Earthquake Island, Pakistan. The powerful earthquake that killed 39 people and toppled homes in Pakistan in September of 2013 also created an island. The Pakistanis claim that it was a 7.7 earthquake, where the US, their geological survey site in Colorado, claimed it was 7.8. Regardless of what it was, it created an island. There isn't much to this island other than there wasn't an island on a Thursday, there was an island on a Friday, and by Monday it had a Starbucks and a Walmart. Number 5, the Isle of Bermeja, Mexico. So Mexico thought it had an island, and then they didn't. The island of Bermeja was on all the maps since the 1500s, all in the same location. They had ship logs from back in the day saying it was there. This little island isn't something you need to visit for it to be important to Mexico or any country that has an island like this. International law says all countries own all the rights to fishing, oil, and minerals for 200 nautical miles out from their land. So if you have an island that, all the way around it, 200 miles out, that's your area. So this is good. This island was like 55 miles off Mexico's mainland, so this pushed their area out quite a good distance. So life was good. Mexico stretched out a little bit further into the Gulf, and then some Navy ships in 1997 went out to inspect the island, and they couldn't find it. It is supposedly 31 square miles, so chances of them just missing it are very slim. Well, this has kind of been an obsession for Mexico to find this island for the last decade or so, because it kind of put them in a pickle. They really like oil. They're still trying to find it. There's a lot of different theories to what happened. Obviously, the most basic is like that island that appeared in Pakistan. This one could have just disappeared because of an earthquake. So they've sent divers and all kinds of things. They can't find this thing. In Mexico, though, there's all kinds of conspiracies. Most of them center around the United States getting rid of their island. Like the CIA got big ship-type bulldozers and dug up their island so it disappeared so Mexico can't get all that oil out. That's one theory. The other theory is we bombed it with a nuclear bomb, all this other stuff. But as a result of their missing island, Mexico's economic zone has been sharply reduced. Number 4, Nam Madal, Micronesia. Explorers first discovered the ruins of Nam Madal nearly 100 years ago on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. The island is situated about 1,600 miles from Australia and about 2,500 miles from Los Angeles. The island is just another one of the many beautiful islands in Micronesia with welcoming people and kava. Yes, kava. It's a drink that tastes like dirt, but it helps you relax. When you drink a few cups, your mouth goes numb. The cool thing about this drink is you know when you've had too much because you lose the use of your legs. There's a little island about 100 yards off of Pohnpei where another island that has something weird on it. It's not really as much an island as it is a peninsula type thing. Anyway, there's an ancient city on this little island called Nam Madal. Some locals in Pohnpei refuse to go near the ruins of the city, believing it's haunted. They say human sacrifices went on here and all kinds of weird hoodoo and guru stuff. They don't know much about who built it or why. There was no written documentation, and all they know is from stories passed down from generation to generation, and nobody tells the whole story because they believe if they tell the whole story, they'll die right afterwards. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Oh, and they think all the rocks were placed there by magic. Like flown through the air, big rocks, and put in place by magic. Number 3, Bannerman Island. Bannerman Island is in the Hudson River, about an hour drive from New York City. If you've ever taken the Metro North train, you can see it, or at least what's left of the castle he built there. Frank Bannerman was at one point in the 1800s the biggest arms dealer in the world and one of the richest. He bought and sold surplus military equipment at government auctions at the end of the Civil War. He had a warehouse in New York City that kept all his inventory. That was until he purchased huge amounts of black powder, which, if you don't know, is explosive and can blow up. Well, his neighbors found out about that, and they weren't too keen on what was going on in the warehouse anymore, so he found an island up the Hudson River for his arsenal. He named the island after himself. The next spring, he constructed a small castle on the island next to his arsenal, and life was great, until he died in 1918. That's when construction stopped. The island was abandoned in the 1950s, and on August 8, 1969, a fire gutted the arsenal, and New York State, which had bought Bannerman Island and its buildings in 1967, declared the island off limits. It reopened in 2017, and you can now take tours there, and they'll tell you all about the weirdness that went on there. Number 2, Norman's Cay, Bahamas. Norman's Cay is a small island in the Bahamas that served as the headquarters for Carlos Letter's smuggling operation from 1978 till around 1982. Everyone's heard of Pablo Escobar. Well, he was one of his best smugglers. And what's really weird about this dude, he was doing it for the money, but he was also doing it to try and overthrow the United States. You know, he was kind of selling it and then buying weapons for guerrillas in Colombia and all this other stuff. It's just a whole weird mess. Anyway, there was a small airstrip here which they lengthened and started flying in a fleet of airplanes in from Colombia and out to the United States. The entire island had armed guards, attack dogs, radar, the whole thing. They spared no expense for their security. It only lasted 4 years. Actually, in that business, that's a long time. In the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, they touched on the island briefly, but it is an interesting story. Apparently they had legendary parties there, and it was just a crazy island to be anywhere near. They always said you didn't want to land there, like if your plane had problems, ditch it in the ocean, don't land there. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel, as does hitting the subscribe button. Be part of our community. Hit that subscribe button. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, the island of Tinian. North of Guam, you have a little island called Tinian. Tinian, together with Saipan, was possibly first sighted by Europeans of the Spanish expedition of Ferdinand Magellan, when it made landfall in the southern Marianas on March 6, 1521. The Spanish were the first to plant their flag here, and later on the Germans did. Under Spanish rule, the island was developed into ranches for raising cattle and pigs, which were used as provisions for Spanish galleons en route to Mexico. In 1914, during World War I, the island was captured by the Japanese, which was awarded formal control in 1918 by the League of Nations as part of the South Seas Mandate. During the first part of World War II, the Japanese didn't have any military on the island. None. You'd think they would. Then someone in Tokyo looked at a map and said, holy crap, they could bomb us from there. So they sent troops. Not long after that, someone in Washington, D.C. looked at a map and said, holy crap, we could bomb them from there. So the Battle of Saipan and Tinian went down. We won and built some nice airstrips for B-29s. These were the airplanes that dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. The remains of the bomber base and the atomic bomb pits still remain. So do the Japanese fortifications located at the North Field. There's a memorial on the old airfield at the load pits. These were pits they had to dig into the ground so they could put the bombs in the ground. They were so big you couldn't load them conventionally, so you had to drive over the pit and they'd put the bomb in through the pit. Now they've got a nice roof over them with glazed panels and metal framing, and they're safe for viewing. So if you ever go to the island of Tinian, which most people don't, you could see them. So the island of Tinian pretty much played a major part of ending World War II, at least the war in the Pacific.
And finally, we're going to take a look at some places where nature can kill you. Let's take a look.
Have you ever looked at your cat, dog, or goldfish and thought, you know what? One of these days, that thing's gonna kill me in my sleep. Well, that happens more often than you think. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to World According to Briggs. Today, we're looking at the deadliest animals in the United States. One of the most Googled searches when it comes to animals is how many people are killed by certain animals each year. Most people are shocked to find out how many people are actually killed by animals. I know number 1 and number 3 on this list kind of blew me away. I was also surprised of a few that didn't even make this list. Yeah, some of the ones you think are out killing people like every weekend, they're not even on this list. It happens so rarely. All right, let's see what'll kill you in the United States. Number 10, sharks. The chances of being killed by a shark are very slim. They're about the same as being strangled by a man in high heels using a feathered boa. Not kidding at all. Look it up. It's actually safer to swim in the ocean than to mock a man doing a drag rendition of Girls Just Want to Have Fun. 1.5 people are killed every single year by sharks. That means over 10 years, it averages about 1.5. Some years got 2, some years got 1. You get the idea. But on the other side of that coin, humans kill over 1 million sharks a year. Usually it's for the shark fin trade. Apparently in parts of Asia, that's considered a delicacy or some kind of herbal medication type thing. I don't know. But people are killing about 1 million sharks a year. Number 9, bears. We all love bears. I mean, who didn't have a teddy bear when you were a kid? You grow up thinking these things are nice, warm, fuzzy, and you get to cuddle with them. And if you're old enough, you remember Yogi Bear. He was nothing but fun. He just wanted a picnic basket. But actually, he's not after your picnic basket. He's after whatever he could get his hands on to eat, which in some cases may include you. Most of the time, they're very skittish and prefer not to confront humans, but when cornered, they will attack and they will kill you. One bear you definitely never want to be around is a mother bear who's got cubs. She'll attack you. Most other bears will just, sense you, see you, and leave the area. 1.5 people are killed each year by bears in the United States. That includes Alaska, too, which I know it's not part of the contiguous United States, but it is the United States. Number 8. Venomous snakes. Yeah, I say venomous because not many people die from a garter snake. Actually, there's this area right up the hill from me. We got this nature park, and I went to this little area that's a pond type area, and I was kind of looking at it, and I looked at the other side of the bank, and it was moving. There had to be over 100 garter snakes there. I know they're garter snakes because some other older dude was there watching it with me, and he said, yeah, those are garter snakes, and they kind of hatch here. Thousands of people are bitten by snakes every year, but don't die due to medical treatment. The ones that do die are usually because they couldn't get to the medical treatment. Maybe they're out in the woods, they didn't take any supplies with them, and they couldn't get to a hospital or a clinic or anything like that on time. According to the University of Florida, fewer than 1 in 37,000 people are bitten by venomous snakes each year in the US. Venomous snakes kill 6.2 people every single year. Number 7, spiders. Yeah, everyone's favorite. Nobody likes a spider, especially me. I was bit by a black widow when I was in the military on my face, and it left a little scar. Not bad, but luckily I was right there with medics, and so they got me to the TMC, as they called it, and they gave me some injections on my face. They thought it was going to be a pretty big scar. It turned out not being a big deal. The two most venomous spiders in the U.S. are the brown recluse and the black widow spider. The bites are treated with anti-venom, and people survive most of the time. As you know, because they're so small, spiders are going to be more afraid of you than you are of them. But they do defend themselves, so that's when you get bit, especially if you're sticking your hand places you shouldn't be, or you sleep in a shed that you shouldn't be sleeping in when you're in the military. Yeah, that happens. 7 people each year are killed by venomous spiders in the US. Number 6. Fire ants. This is the first one that blew me away. I had no idea fire ants killed anyone until I researched this. Fire ants are extremely aggressive and they will attack you. No other ants do this. They actually come after you. They mainly live in the southern US. And I remember drill sergeants, because I went to basic training in Georgia. I remember the drill sergeants warning us about fire ants and things like that. I saw them. I didn't know they actually killed people. Most of the people that do die go into anaphylactic shock because of the many stings, but some people just get red bumps and it goes away on its own and you don't need anything. But obviously, if you see a whole bunch of fire ants someplace, don't set up camp there, don't sit down, don't relax, don't set up a sleeping bag, don't get drunk and sit on an anthill. Stupid stuff like that will get you killed by fire ants. Fire ants, on average, kill 9 people every year. Number 5, wild boars. Yeah, who saw this one coming? Well, I kinda did. I own a pig. Sure, she's not a wild boar. She's supposed to be a mini pig. Not a teacup pig, but apparently a mini pig. And that is a lie. They don't stay mini. A mini pig is basically a puppy. As they get bigger, they become a full-grown pig, and they become the loudest thing you own. Really, you could own a Harley, and I promise you, my pig is louder when she's not getting her way. That includes not getting her apple on time in the morning, and she does this thing where she charges you. She doesn't bite you, she just bumps you with her head or her snout. So that's why I could see wild boars killing people, because they got those gnarly tusks sticking out the side. And wild boar attack unprovoked. They're trying to maim you as soon as they do. They try and cut your legs with their tusks. I watched this whole thing on them. They actually go for an animal or a person's legs to immobilize them or make them so they can't run away, and then they attack once you fall over. It's pretty weird. They do kill a bunch of people here in the US every year, but it's not nearly as bad in the US as it is worldwide. There were actually more fatal pig attacks worldwide than shark attacks in 2013. Now, also, the United States, we don't get that many shark attacks compared to places like Africa and stuff. They get a bunch. But yeah, more pigs killed people than sharks did in 2013. 9.5 people are killed every year by wild boars in the US. Number 4, cows. Yeah, that thing that gives us milk, steak, and leather masks with zippers for mouths. Yeah, they kill people. They're killing people at a rate that is more than once a month. Just to put you at ease, though, there aren't roving herds of homicidal dairy cows cruising around the United States. Most of the deaths occur on dairy and cattle farms. Occasionally, some will find their way onto the highway and get hit by vehicles. That sucks for a cow if it gets hit by a truck, but it's deadly for someone on a motorcycle or maybe a Prius. A bull can weigh up to 2,400 pounds and a female cow can weigh up to 1,200 pounds. You hit one of those in a Prius, you got airbags going off and pumpkin spice lattes all over what's left of your windshield because Bessie the cow came through the driver's side of the windshield and crushed you, ironically, against your cow pattern seat covers. More than 20 people are killed a year by cows. Number 3, dogs. Yeah, man's best friend isn't always cool with that arrangement. Any dog can kill you, not just pit bulls or Rottweilers. If you've got a damaged dog owner that doesn't train their dogs properly, you've got a very damaged dog usually that can be unpredictable. I had a couple boxers that would get pretty aggressive if I raised my voice to my kids. Yeah, they don't like it at all. I think those two had plans for me if I ever dished out a spanking, to the kids at least. I think they would have been cool if it was a consenting adult. I mean, I think they were into that. But most dog attacks come without warning or reason. It's not like you gotta hit a dog for him to attack you. Some of them, like I said, are unpredictable because they had bad trainers. I'm not gonna get all into it because I know there's a bunch of dog people out there that all kinds of intricate little facts and studies they know about because that's their life, and they're gonna question everything I say about this. But the hard fact is, dogs kill 28 people a year on average. Number 2, bees, wasps, and hornets. They say that if all the bees die, the earth dies. If you've ever been stung by a bee, you'd be okay with that for a couple hours after the sting. I mean, it hurts, you're mad, you don't care if the bees die. I got stung by a bee sitting in a dugout of a Little League game when I was 7 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was painful. I couldn't stand it. I'm not allergic, so I didn't die. Hornets and wasps sting you too. I've never been stung by one, but I heard it's even worse. They had killer bees that were supposed to kill us all in the 80s. I don't know whatever happened to those dudes, but they never really showed up. Then you got the Africanized bees that showed up recently, last couple of years, I guess. Killed some people, but not as many as they said we're going to. I mean, I thought we were all going to be dying in droves from these Africanized bees. Never really. But most people that are killed by bees had an allergic reaction and didn't get medical attention quick enough. A lot like the spider bites and the venomous snakes. If you don't have some sort of allergy to stings like that, you're going to be fine. It's just painful and it's annoying, as we all know. But 58 people on average die a year from bees, wasps, or hornets. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget to give the video a big thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. Also, we have another channel called On This Day. If you haven't been to that one, there'll be a link down below, along with some other videos that you might be interested along these lines of this video. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, deer. Yeah, you heard me right, deer. Bambi's out killing people. Just when you thought it was safe to go for a nice walk in the forest, you find out deer are killing people. And they're killing quite a few. Deer cause the most human deaths per year of any animal in the United States. Now, how does this happen? Well, they cause tens of thousands of car accidents every single year because they blindly jump into the road. You know, their parents aren't telling them to stay out of the street. My mom told me that all the time. I almost got hit by several cars. And my mom still warned me. These guys are getting no parental guidance whatsoever when it comes to running across the highway. I mean, you see the signs all the time warning you that these deers have no common sense. They just run right out in front of you. And then the headlights hit them and they freeze. When headlights are moving towards you, shouldn't your natural reaction be to get the hell out of the way? Not for deers, they got their own agenda. Yeah, but more than 200 people die every single year because of deer. They have the occasional one that maybe dies because it got hit in the woods or it got gored by their antlers. So, male one ran them down or something weird like that. That happens very, very rarely. Almost all of them are because of car accidents caused by deer. Weird. What did I find out in April of 2022 that blew my mind so much I started researching insects and spiders for over 6 months? Well, I'm going to tell you. But before I do, there's a few things about insects in America. Insects can be a nuisance. They can also pose significant threats to agriculture, structures, and human health. While every state in the US has its share of insect problems, some states have more severe insect issues than others, like far more severe.
Another thing you need to understand is spiders and insects are not the same thing. Spiders are arachnids and insects belong to the Insecta class. Basically, one's a spider, one's an insect. Today we're looking at the 10 states with the worst insect problems and some stories to go along with it. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Alabama. In Alabama, there's a species of insect called the love bug, and it is notorious for being in the mood a couple times a year. This becomes a nuisance to residents and visitors. During mating season, which occurs twice a year in late spring and early fall, these black and orange insects can be seen flying around in pairs, often stuck together in a mating position for hours on end. They're harmless to humans, but their large numbers can make them a driving hazard as they swarm around cars and obstruct the driver's vision. I was told about these years ago. One summer, a friend of mine said they were driving along a rural road and she encountered a swarm of the love bugs. She tried to, get through them, but so many smashed on her window, she actually had to pull over and wait for the insects to kind of go away. She cleaned off her windshield and drove on. Some of the common insect species found in Alabama include mosquitoes. They get pretty bad. They're ticks, which are horrible, ants, beetles, and bees. Some of these insects can be harmful, such as the ticks because they carry Lyme disease, and fire ants can deliver a painful sting. However, many of the insects also play an important role in pollination in the ecosystem. You also get chiggers there too. Alabama has a pretty bad problem though with mosquitoes, termites, and cockroaches, which can pose health risks and cause significant damage to homes and businesses. Definitely bring down your property value. On a good note, they're also known for a large number of butterflies and moth species. Number 9, South Carolina. In 2019, South Carolina experienced an outbreak of the Asian giant hornet, which is also known by its more cuddly name, the murder hornet. These invasive hornets, which are native to Asia, obviously in case the name Asia didn't tip you off, they can grow up to 2 inches long and have a venomous sting that can be deadly to humans. I kind of want one as a pet at this point. The first sighting of the Asian giant hornet was in August of 2019 when a resident in the town of Bluffton spotted one in their yard. Over the next few weeks, several more sightings were reported in the area, and the South Carolina Department of Agriculture launched an investigation to determine the extent of the infestation. Thankfully, it was determined that the hornet population was small and localized. The Asian giant hornet is just one example of many different types of insects that can be found in South Carolina, which is home to a diverse array of insect species, including mosquitoes, ticks, bees, and ants. While some insects can pose threat to humans and other organisms, many play important roles in the ecosystem and contribute to the natural balance of the environment. South Carolina definitely, though, has issues with mosquitoes, ticks, and termites. Now, in South Carolina, like most of the South, the hot, humid climate is perfect for so many different insects. Number 8, Oklahoma. Now, the insect story in Oklahoma involves the emergence of cicadas in the summer of 2021. These insects, known as brood 4, had been underground for 17 years before emerging in large numbers throughout the state. The cicadas are known for their loud, distinctive buzzing sound and can be a nuisance to some due to their sheer numbers and noise. However, they really don't pose a threat to humans other than being irritating, and they're actually beneficial to the environment. They just creep you out, especially if you've never seen them before, you don't know. They're everywhere. They're all over the ground. It looks like the ground is moving. It's gross. And then they shed their skin, and that's even grosser. Is grosser a word, or is he a guy that takes care of really good produce? The animal population, every kind of rodent, skunk, possum, whatever, eats the cicadas and they get fat during this time of the year every 17 years. Oklahoma is a southern state, and it has the same problems that most southern states have with mosquitoes, ticks, and termites. Now, they're not insects, they're arachnids like we talked about earlier, but they also have a lot of spiders in some areas of the state. Oklahoma's varied landscape is home to a wide variety of insects and spiders. Number 7, Arkansas. In the summer of 2019, Arkansas got its cicadas. A swarm of periodical cicadas emerged in Arkansas after spending their 17 years underground. These cicadas were known as Brood 14. They were part of a larger group of cicadas that emerged in various parts of the eastern United States. These also make the same noise. It is loud, it is constant, and then they leave that ghostly looking shell on trees and other surfaces. So they get out of their skin or their their shell or whatever, and they leave it there. And it sits there, and it looks all white and transparent, and it looks like a ghost bug. It's really gross. It's kind of sick. One of the biggest problems with these things is they fly around everywhere, and they're flying in people's faces, getting tangled in girls' hair. It was kind of gross. There was tons of pictures of this one up on social media. Arkansas, like most southern states, have problems with mosquitoes, ticks, and termites. Another state that has chiggers. These are a mite. In Britain, they call them harvest mites. But what sucks about them is they get and they burrow into your skin where you sweat, like around where your socks come up, your armpits, around your undercarriage. If you're out in the woods and you're getting sweaty, yeah, they show up there. People often confuse these as fleas. They are not. They burrow into your skin. They're a berry bug or bush mite. Some people call them scrub itch mites. Number 6, Missouri. Missouri is another state that has all kinds of wonderful things to really bother you if you hate insects and spiders. They also get cicadas. Their large numbers come out every 13 or 17 years, depending on the species. In 2021, brood 10 cicadas emerged in several states, including Missouri. In May and June of 2021, residents in many parts of Missouri experienced the deafening chorus of millions of cicadas. In case you want to know how loud that gets, it can get up to 100 decibels. A chainsaw at 1 meter distance, a diesel truck at 1 meter. Yeah, they can get loud. Missouri also has problems with mosquitoes, ticks, and termites, but one of their most well-known insects is the firefly, also known as the lightning bug. These bioluminescent insects are commonly seen lighting up the night sky during the summer months. Missouri is also home to a variety of beetle species, including scarab beetles, tiger beetles, and longhorned beetles. But the biggest problem is going to be your mosquitoes. They got a lot of water in Missouri and a lot of mosquitoes. They can transmit diseases like Lyme disease and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Missouri also has a bug called the kissing bug. This bug is known for transmitting a parasite that causes Chagas disease. Number 5, Virginia. Virginia is another state that had the cicadas come out recently. Just like everywhere else, they were loud, ugly, and nasty. But they also have a lot of other things that are kind of scary, like the brown recluse. It's not native to Virginia, but the brown recluse spider has been found in the state. Its bite can cause tissue damage and in rare cases can be fatal. They also have the eastern velvet ant, also known as the cow killer ant. The eastern velvet ant is actually a type of wasp. Its sting is extremely painful and can cause swelling, but it's not usually deadly. Now, all these places have cicadas. They also have the eastern cicada killer wasp. The eastern cicada killer wasp is a large wasp that preys on cicadas. And like every other southern state, Virginia has issues with mosquitoes, ticks, termites, chiggers, and various species of ants. Number 4, California. California has a real problem with termites, bed bugs, and cockroaches. Now, this was the first surprise I got when I was researching this. I didn't know California had that many insects and just nasty things. I knew we had black widows. I've seen them. I knew we had scorpions out in the desert along with all kinds of rattlesnakes and everything else like that, but I didn't know that we had all these different bugs. We have termites, a whole bunch of bed bugs, and a ton of cockroaches. I always say we like I still live there. I haven't lived there in 12 years. California's diverse landscape is home to a wide variety of insects, including bees, wasps, butterflies, and beetles. They also have western pine beetles and Mediterranean fruit flies. Few of the other things they have, which not in large numbers, it depends on where you go, but yellow jackets. It's a type of wasp found throughout California. They're very aggressive and will sting you multiple times. This is the other big one, Africanized honeybees. Africanized honeybees are also known as killer bees and were introduced in California in the 1990s. They are more aggressive than other types of honeybees and have been known to swarm and attack people. We thought they were going to be killing thousands of people throughout the state every year. No, never really panned out. But there was a big fear of this going on in the late 80s, early 90s. I guess when we weren't afraid of nuclear war anymore, we'd been dealing with it for 20 years, they decided to start scaring us with Africanized bees. Biggest problem I ever ran into when I was there, I hated all the flies. When you go down by the ocean, seaweed time of the year, seaweed starts drying out and there's just flies everywhere on the beach. Hated it. Number 3, Louisiana. Now, Louisiana has a pretty interesting story, and it involves a termite called a formosan, or formicin, or formosan. I've heard 3 different names for this. This invasive species of termite is believed to have first arrived in the United States in the mid-20th century and has since spread throughout the southeastern part of the country, including in Louisiana. Formosan termite is also known for its destructive feeding habit and can cause significant damage to buildings, wooden structures, and trees. In Louisiana, they have been responsible for over $1 million in property damage and are considered a serious threat to homes and other structures. And then, of course, you're still in the South, so you're going to have serious mosquito, chigger, fleas, and the southern green stink bug, along with the cotton bollworm. You could also find Africanized honeybees in Louisiana, the red imported fire ant, of course the brown recluse, and on top of all that, Louisiana is filled with swamps, and we're not talking about reptiles and stuff, but they got a ton of different snakes and lizards and turtles, just a bunch of stuff to freak out if you go out in the woods. Number 2, Mississippi. In the early 20th century, a severe infestation of the boll weevil, a type of beetle that feeds on cotton plants, devastated the cotton crops in the southern United States, including and especially Mississippi. This caused significant economic hardship to farmers who relied on the cotton as their primary crop. In response to this crisis, agricultural scientists and farmers in Mississippi and other affected states began to diversify their crops and adopt new farming practices such as crop rotation and pest management strategies. When 80% of your economy is cotton and something like this happens, you're talking decades before you recover. But all the different things that they did to, kind of put this down, it worked. It improved the overall health and productivity of the region's agricultural sector. But Mississippi has all the typical southern issues: mosquitoes, termites, and fire ants. That's a big one here. Fire ants are everywhere. Now, in my opinion, in all the places I've been, Mississippi was by far the worst when it came to insects. The gnats get in your face. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's not on this list, but Georgia was the absolute worst with the gnats. I went through basic training, a bunch of other things in Georgia, and no matter what, the gnats were just in your face all the time. And they wouldn't let you swat at the ants either. All right, before we get to number 1, this is what I learned in 2022 that made me start researching this video. I thought in the beginning, I'm not into bugs. I thought spiders were insects also, and I learned that. But I'm not alone. 65% of the population in the United States, at least, thinks spiders are insects. And this is the next thing that blew me away. I thought for sure at least 50% of the population was afraid of spiders. No, nowhere near it. Around the world, between 3 and 15% of individuals have been diagnosed with some sort of phobia. Fear of animals, fear of heights, triskaidekaphobia, which is the fear of the number 13, agoraphobia, which is the fear of being in crowds, luposlipophobia, which is the fear of being chased around a table by timber wolves in your socks, and of course, arachnophobia. This is the one I thought that maybe 50% of the population had arachnophobia. I know so many people that they see a spider, they freak out, but very few people actually have the phobia. A lot of people are scared of spiders, but they don't have the phobia, which basically incapacitates them if they see a spider. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Florida. Florida, again, all the southern state ones. They got fire ants, black widows, brown recluses. They also have the eastern lumber grasshopper. These very large and very colorful grasshoppers are found throughout Florida and are known for their toxic secretion. If ingested, the secretion can cause vomiting, convulsions, and even death. That's always fun. Of course, they have the giant water bug. This is a large insect that can be found in Florida's freshwater habitats, and they're known for their painful bite. Their venom can cause respiratory distress and other health problems. Florida is also known for having it really bad when it comes to mosquitoes. They got water everywhere. Mosquitoes really need water to breed, grow, and live. In Florida, you can pick up the West Nile virus, the Zika virus, all from mosquitoes. Florida also has a ton of bed bugs, termites, and fire ants. What did I learn while researching snakes in the United States? What myths do most of us wrongfully believe? I'm going to explain those things and more in this video.
After our insect video we did like last week, I got a ton of questions and suggestions about making a snake video. People wanted to know which state had the most types of snakes, which one had the most venomous snakes, and which state has the most deaths caused by snake bites. That last one is where I learned the first myth about snakes. Not a lot of people die from snake bites every year. As a matter of fact, normally less than 10 people get croaked by snakes in the US every year, like 5, 6, 7 maybe. In today's video, we're going to list states that have the most types of snakes and some stories about people that have been bitten and died in those states. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, California. This one isn't a surprise, especially for a guy like myself who grew up in this state and spent a lot of weekends in the desert riding motorcycles and sandrails. California is a large state with many different ecosystems. They have more than 33 snake species in this state, and many of them are found just in California. California has 6 venomous snakes. One native, the saw-scaled viper, may be responsible for more deaths than all the other snake species combined. Now, it's not just because the snake is active or it's more aggressive or anything like that. It is, but California's a big state and it's got a lot of people, so the opportunity's there. But probably the most impressive and most well-known California snake is the western diamondback rattlesnake. This snake can grow up to 6 feet long and has a venomous bite that can be fatal to humans. However, despite its reputation, the western diamondback is an important part of California's ecosystem. Now, here's the death in California from snake bites. William Price, 67. This happened in 2010. Price was bitten above the ankle while wading across a stream in Southern California east of San Diego. He was taking part in a study of steelhead trout that was funded by a grant from the Department of Fish and Game. But California has 33 snake species. Number 9, Alabama. Now, a lot of people just think about rattlesnakes and they think they're only in the desert, and this whole list is going to be about desert states. Definitely not. The South shows up pretty strong on this list. Alabama's just the first of many. Alabama has 43 species of snake, which include the copperhead, the cottonmouth, eastern diamondback rattlesnake, timber rattlesnake, pygmy rattlesnake, and eastern coral snake. When I was in basic training, the cycle before us, the drill sergeants were telling us a story about a guy who, at the firing range, jumped in a foxhole they have set up so you can practice shooting. Well, he didn't look, and there was a coral snake in there that had gotten in there overnight, and he got bit a couple times. He survived, but he got bit a few times. The drill sergeant said they always tell you to identify the snake, so he got bit, tried to grab it so he could identify it, and got bit 2 more times, and finally they got him to the hospital. He came up with the drill sergeants holding a coral snake in his hand. But Alabama is home to a variety of snakes, including the copperhead. This venomous snake is known for its distinct copper-colored head. Hey, how'd it get the name? I don't know. It is often found in wooded areas, but it is rarely seen by humans because it is a very reclusive animal. Oliver Chum Baker was 52. Baker was at his home near Lewis Smith Lake when he was bitten by a copperhead snake and lost consciousness within 2 minutes. CPR was performed, but he was taken to a local hospital in critical condition. Baker was later airlifted to Huntsville Hospital, where he died on May 27, 2019. Alabama has 43 species of snake. Number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is considered a southern state, and some people consider it a western state, so you know it's going to have some snakes. Oklahoma is home to a variety of snake species, including the western diamondback, the copperhead, and the timber rattlesnake. In the wooded areas of eastern Oklahoma, the timber rattlesnake is a common sight. This snake has a very distinct sounding rattle, and it's often encountered by hikers and hunters. Things like that. But it does play a big role. It keeps the rodent population down. Side note to that, if you want me to do a rodent or vermin version of this video series, let me know in the comment section below. Barry Lester was 57 years old on April 29, 2018. He was in Osage County, Oklahoma. Lester was driving down the road when he spotted the rattlesnake. He tried to move it to safety, but was bitten on both hands. Lester collapsed shortly thereafter and was pronounced dead. Oklahoma has 46 species of snake. Number 7, Georgia. The Peach State's got some snakes, just like
all southern states, I guess. Georgia has a large, diverse snake population. Its snakes live all over the state, including brown water, queen, common gardener, and ringneck snakes. Georgia is home to a variety of snakes, but one of the most impressive is the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Yeah, they got them here too. This snake can actually get up to 8 feet long, but this is another one that's really reclusive, so it's rarely seen. In Waverly, Georgia, we hear the sad tale of Priscilla Meredith. She was 62 years old. Meredith was bitten by a timber rattlesnake when she went to sit down in her friend's garden on May 17th. She was put into a medically induced coma for several weeks until her death on June 12th. Meredith was not able to receive antivenom due to her allergies, which her doctor said would have put her life at risk. You know, I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into that one, but I think being bitten by a venomous snake kind of puts your life at risk already. I think I'd roll the dice with the antivenom myself. There are 46 types of snake in Georgia. Number 6, Florida. Just like Georgia, Florida has 46 types of snake. Florida's wild areas have more snakes than any state on the East Coast. Its native snakes include Florida brown snake, the ringneck snake, eastern diamondback rattlesnake, the coral snake, and the cottonmouth. Florida's known for its alligators, but it's also home to a variety of snakes. Eastern coral snake is the big one. It's a brightly colored snake that has distinctive red, yellow, and black bands and is highly venomous. Despite its venom, the eastern coral snake is not aggressive towards humans and is rarely seen. Sadly, Braden Bullard, age 4 in 2014, saw one. He was bitten while planting watermelons in his backyard in Briceville, Florida. He was rushed to the hospital but died 2 weeks later. According to a witness, Price stopped breathing within minutes of being bitten. Price was airlifted to a medical center, but he did die later. Florida has 46 species of snake. Number 5, New Mexico. Back out west, we go to New Mexico. You kind of got to expect New Mexico to have a bunch of rattlesnakes. And if you're expecting it, guess what? They got them. New Mexico has almost 50 species of snake. Now, I've seen 2 different reports, and all of them were the same. They all said, if it was 33, the other one said 33. New Mexico's the only one that had different reports. One said they had 46, and another one said they had 50 species of snake. Some of the snakes found in New Mexico include the western diamondback, the Mojave rattlesnake, the Sonora coral snake, and the prairie rattlesnake. In the grassy plains of New Mexico, a group of researchers recently discovered a new species of snake. The snake was named the muscalero. It's a black-headed snake and only found in small regions of the state, and is unique due to its distinctive black head. I couldn't find any stories on New Mexico of anyone dying from a snake bite, and I searched, so I thought I'd give one that I found amazing from Kentucky. Before I get into this one, I will tell you how this scenario has played out several times in Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, and a few other places. But this one happened in Kentucky. I don't know what the deal is with people including snakes in their church services, but it happened. James Coots, 42, this happened on February 15th, 2014. Coots was bitten on the right hand during a service at his Full Gospel Tabernacle in Jesus' Name Church in Middleborough, Kentucky. God, that church is even a mouthful. After the bite, Coots dropped the 2 snakes that he had and picked them back up to continue the ceremony. Later, he was driven home. When paramedics arrived, his relatives refused medical treatment for him, saying that it was inconsistent with his religion. He died at home. I was just kind of looking at the different deaths that they had mentioned. I would say in the last 20 years, the most common places you will get bit by a snake is your garden or somebody else's garden and at a church service. When I went to church, the only thing I was afraid of was getting beat by a nun with a ruler, not being bitten by a venomous snake. And yes, that whole thing about nuns hitting you with a ruler, it happens. I've been clubbed with a yardstick before. Sister Aurelia Joseph. But New Mexico has 46 species of snake. Number 4, Missouri. The United States has more than 50 snake species, and 47 of them live in Missouri. Here you'll find eastern yellow-bellied racers, northern scarlets, prairie ringnecks, and western worms. They also got several subspecies like the hognose. When you're looking at hognose, they got the eastern and the plains version. You'll also find a few venomous species like the western cottonmouth and the Massasauga, which is a rattlesnake. In July of 2014, Timothy Levins, who was 52 at the time, was camping at Sam A. Baker State Park in Missouri. Levins walked outside, saw a snake, and brought it to the attention of his sons. He decided to show it to his sons, I guess, and he picked it up, and the snake bit him. Levins walked back into the cabin, washed his hands at the kitchen sink, and sat down on the couch. When he became sick, someone from a neighboring cabin came over to help perform CPR. Levins was later pronounced dead at an area hospital. There are 47 species of snake in Missouri.
Number 3, Louisiana. Back to the south we go. Louisiana is home to a variety of snake species, including the copperhead, cottonmouth, and eastern diamondback rattlesnake. In the swamps and bayous of Louisiana, the cottonmouth is a common sight. This is a venomous snake known for its aggressive behavior, and it's sometimes called the water moccasin. Brian L. Bristow was 28 in 1971, and he had been collecting snakes in a bag when one of them bit him on the hand, and it was a water moccasin. This was in Garysville, Louisiana, on December 29, 1971. He did not survive. There are 48 species of snake in Louisiana. Number 2, Arizona. Here we go. This is a place that just screams snake. When I think about being bitten by a rattlesnake, it's going to happen in Arizona because I was brought up on cowboy movies, and that's always where you found the rattlesnakes. And quicksand. I really used to think people were going to die of quicksand all the time. Matter of fact, when kids would disappear when I was younger, I always thought maybe it was the quicksand. Has anyone ever thought of that? There are 52 species of snake living in Arizona. 13 of those are rattlesnake species. More than 1/3 of the world's rattlesnake species are believed to live in Arizona. Not all rattlesnakes are the same. In the desert region, the Mojave rattlesnake is known to have venom that is much more potent than other species of rattlesnakes. In fact, its venom is so potent that it can cause significant damage to human tissue and organs, even if you get the anti-venom. In October of 2007, Jackie Ledwell, 63 years old, was bitten by one while she was just taking a walk in Paulden, Arizona. Just out for her walk and got bit by a rattlesnake, and that was it. Arizona's got 52 types of snake. And number 1, Texas. Yes, Texas is big. Texas is a western state, so yeah, it's gonna have some snakes. It's not just the western desert part. You got the whole area over there by Houston, all the way to the Louisiana border that gets kind of swampy. And you're gonna have some wonderful species of venomous snake in the swamps. When you're looking for the state with the most species of snakes, Texas wins handily with 68. Some of the snakes found in Texas include the western diamondback rattlesnake, the coral snake, copperhead, and cottonmouth. In the remote desert regions of West Texas, a group of researchers once discovered a rare species of snake that had never been seen before. The snake had unique markings and was eventually named the Trans-Pecos rat snake. It was a significant discovery for the area and still studied to this day. Grant Thompson was 18 on July 14, 2015. Thompson was found unresponsive in his car in a Lowe's store parking lot in Austin, Texas. He was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. A monocled cobra that he was known to own was missing and was later found dead nearby, having been run over by a car. An autopsy was performed, and they figured Thompson pushed his own off button, letting his snake be a snake. Texas has 68 snakes to choose from. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, don't get bit by a snake, and be nice to each other.